The serial killer plastered all over the news was in my apartment. And I had just kissed him. "You're not afraid of me?" he asked. I nodded, then immediately shook my head, my voice a ragged whisper. I am afraid. The night was deep, winter having clawed its way into the season far too early. I was cocooned in my kotatsu, the heated table a small comfort, idly watching cartoons as snowflakes, thick as down, danced outside my window, painting the world in a silent, pristine shroud. Tomorrow, I mused, I could finally build that enormous snowman I'd been dreaming of. Ding dong. The sudden chime of the doorbell sliced through the quiet. I glanced at the digital clock glowing above the television. 1 a.m. Who on earth would be calling at this ungodly hour, especially on a night so frigid? A shiver, and not just from the cold, traced its way down my spine. With a sigh of reluctance, I peeled myself from the warmth and padded to the door. The moment I pulled it open, a tidal wave of regret crashed over me. A blade, cold and sharp, pressed against my stomach. Its owner was a young man, clad only in a thin hoodie despite the biting cold, his lower face obscured by a black mask, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. "Inside," he rasped, his voice muffled. My feet seemed to move of their own accord, stumbling backward as he stepped into the apartment, kicking the door shut behind him and throwing the deadbolt. The click echoed with a chilling finality. "Who are you?" I managed, hearing the tremor in my own voice. My gaze dropped to the knife. The tip was stained with something dark. Crimson. He yanked off his cap, the knife still unwavering as he gestured towards the sofa. "Get over there. Not a sound or I'll kill you." My legs felt like jelly. I stumbled backward, catching my heel on the kotatsu's leg, and crashed to the floor. Pain shot through my hip, but fear was a more potent silencer. He pulled down his mask. His features were handsome, finely chiseled, yet marred by an undercurrent of volatile aggression that glinted in his eyes. I watched, numb, as he picked up the remote from the kotatsu and switched the channel to the news. "We interrupt this program with breaking news," a stern voice announced from the television. "A citywide alert is in effect following a series of homicides in Northwood City. The perpetrator remains at large. Residents are urged to exercise extreme caution, ensure all doors and windows are securely locked, and refrain from opening their doors to strangers." My blood ran cold. A killer on the loose, and the news decided to warn us now? I didn't want to die, not like this. He pressed the power button, and the small room plunged into an even deeper, more terrifying silence. I watched, mesmerized by a morbid dread, as he tightened his grip on the knife and started towards me. "My apologies," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "In your next life, perhaps you'll think twice before opening your door to a stranger." My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of terror and a desperate primal will to live. Before I could process the impulse, I lunged. My hand shot out, clamping down on his wrist, the one holding the knife. With my other hand, I grabbed the front of his hoodie, pulled his face towards mine and kissed him. A real mouth-to-mouth kiss. He froze, stunned. The raw shock in his eyes was almost comical, had the situation not been so utterly dire. After a moment that stretched into an eternity, he slowly lowered the knife. A strange, almost boyish smile touched his lips, though the danger hadn't entirely receded from his eyes. "You kissed me." I could only stare back, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "You're not afraid of me?" "I am afraid," I whispered, the admission tasting like ash. His smile widened, a chillingly beautiful sight. "Afraid, yet you dare to kiss me?" "I'm afraid of dying." "Who isn't?" I'd clawed my way through life this far. I wasn't about to let it end here in my own living room at the hands of a stranger. He stood, his gaze sweeping around my small apartment before settling back on me. "You're the first one who's ever dared to do something like that. Weren't you afraid I'd kill you in a fit of rage?" "Oh, I was terrified, absolutely petrified." Please don't ask me that again. I'm begging you," my mind screamed. Aloud, I could only manage another choked. "Afraid. What's your name?" "Sarah," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Leo. That's my name." I blinked, a silent question in my eyes. Without warning, he surged forward, hauled me to my feet, and threw me onto the sofa. Before I could react, his mouth was on mine, a brutal, possessive kiss, nothing like the desperate one I'd initiated. This was raw, an assertion of power. This was assault. I wanted to scream, to fight, but a primal fear kept me paralyzed. The sky outside was a bruised, desolate gray when I next became fully aware. I lay there, feigning sleep, his arm a heavy, unwelcome weight around me. Last night, he hadn't taken things to the ultimate extreme, but it was more than enough to scar me for life. Truth be told, I'm fairly pragmatic about such things. Nothing is more important than life itself. My parents were gone too soon, I couldn't bear the thought of my own life being cut short at 23, another tragic headline. My plan was simple. Survive this, and the moment he left I'd call the police. I was a coward, easily terrified, and this was beyond anything I could handle. I'd been staring at the ceiling, lost in a grim reverie, for what felt like an hour. Time had never crawled so slowly. When did you wake up? His voice, rough with sleep, startled me so badly I flinched. He instinctively tightened his hold. A beat of silence then. When did you wake up, I couldn't sleep. How could anyone sleep soundly next to a murderer? He idly twisted a strand of my hair around his finger. Why? I lied, grasping for the most innocuous excuse. I wanted to watch some cartoons. A low chuckle rumbled in his chest. He reached for my laptop on the nightstand, handing it to me. Unlock it. And so an absurdly domestic scene unfolded. I, his unwilling captive, was forced to lean against his chest while we watched children's cartoons. Eventually exhaustion claimed me. In my sleep I dreamt of a life I once had, a life filled with warmth. My mother, her smile gentle, would sneak me extra snacks from the kitchen, her eyes twinkling. My father would chuckle, ruffling my hair and calling me his little glutton. But dreams, as they often are, were a cruel inversion of reality. The next morning, as the first pale light of dawn filtered through the curtains, the aroma of something cooking wafted from the kitchen. I jolted awake. The space beside me was empty. Panic flared. I scrambled to find my phone, my laptop, anything to call for help. But they were gone. The room had been stripped of any means of communication. Wrapping my robe tightly around myself, I crept into the kitchen. Leo stood at the stove, calmly preparing breakfast. Was I still dreaming? Or had I died, and this was some bizarre fabricated afterlife? You're awake, he said, not turning around. Come eat. I didn't understand. Why hadn't he killed me? Wasn't he a wanted fugitive? Why was he here making me breakfast? We sat across from each other, the tension in the small kitchen thick enough to cut with his knife. I couldn't hold back the question any longer. Why didn't you kill me? His eyes met mine, dark and unreadable. Because I want to take you to hell with me. The man was insane. A certified lunatic. Do we know each other? I ventured, a desperate hope flickering within me. Leo didn't even look up from his plate. No. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity of torment. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. The doorbell rang. An involuntary tremor ran through me. When I was nervous, I became utterly useless. Leo took a slow sip of his milk, then from out of nowhere produced a gun. He placed it conspicuously on the table, its black steel glinting ominously. He gestured with his chin towards the door. I knew what he meant. The intent to kill, which had briefly receded, was back, sharp and clear in his eyes. My hand shook as I opened the door. A young woman in a chic white coat stood on the threshold. Not someone I recognized. Tears pricked at my eyes. Yes? Who are you looking for? I asked, deliberately shifting, creating a gap, praying she'd see Leo, see the danger and run. Clack. The sound of the gun hitting the wooden table. I whipped my head back to look at Leo. He waved a dismissive hand, signaling for me to let the woman in. I complied, my will crumbling. In a state of extreme fear, courage becomes a distant, unattainable luxury. The woman brushed past me, walking directly towards him. Now, this was my chance. If I could just slip out the door. As I reached for the doorknob, my fingers brushing the cool metal, Leo's hand shot out, snatching it away from me. With a dull thud, he slammed the door shut, my escape route severed. What do you think you're doing? Leo's voice was dangerously soft. One step. If I had been a fraction of a second faster, I might have been free. I shook my head, words failing me. I don't know. Leo grabbed my arm, his grip like iron, and dragged me towards the bedroom, throwing me inside. His face was a mask of fury, like a demon crawled up from the depths of hell. Behave, he snarled. Don't make me angry. The door slammed shut. I stared blankly at the handle. Save me. Please, someone, anyone, save me. Muffled voices, sharp and angry, filtered through the door. I scrambled off the bed, pressing my ear to the wood. Leo, you're threatening me. The woman's voice was inaudible. Perhaps she wasn't speaking at all. Leo, I've already cleaned up your messes, Claire. Don't try to test my limits. Silence. Then footsteps approaching. I scrambled back as Leo opened the door. I won't say anything, I swear, I babbled. Please don't kill me. Leo cut me off. I'm not going to kill you. We'll meet again, Miss Sarah. I followed him out of the bedroom. The woman, Claire, was already by the front door, holding his coat and a small bag. Suddenly I remembered. The gun. It was still on the dining table. Leo was already stepping out. Wait, I called. You forgot something. He paused, turning. What? My hand trembled as I pointed. Your gun. A slow, chilling smile spread across Leo's face. That. It's empty. Nothing in it. A little souvenir for you. Remember what I said, Miss Sarah. We'll meet again. And then he was gone. The moment the door closed behind him, I called the police. Officer, I'm telling you. A murderer broke into my apartment. I pleaded, desperation clawing at my throat. It was hopeless. Even the police didn't believe me. I'm sorry, Miss Sarah, the officer on the line said, his voice tinged with professional skepticism. If you're referring to the man from last night's news bulletin, he was apprehended by our officers at 1:32 a.m. What? I'm sorry, ma'am, but we now have reason to suspect you of illegal firearm possession. Please come with us to the station. I was stunned. This was Leo's souvenir? A one-way ticket to jail? No, officer, it's not my gun. Please, you have to believe me. Fingerprints. You can check for fingerprints. No one else has been in my apartment that man last night. I trailed off. How could I explain to the police that I'd spent the night in the same bed as Leo, a man I claimed was a killer? I felt like I was going insane. What kind of rotten luck was this? Not only did I encounter a madman, but now I was going to jail because of him. There were no fingerprints from Leo, not on the gun, not in the house. Even a segment of the security footage from my building's lobby was conveniently missing. I was detained for 15 days. The gun was confiscated. With no prior record and no discernible means of acquiring a firearm, they couldn't pin a serious charge on me, but I still ended up with a mark on my record. And just like that, my job was gone too. I hated this winter with a fierce, burning passion. I stared blankly at the television mounted on the wall of the holding area, lost in my thoughts. Then I saw him. On the screen. My demon, impeccably dressed in a slim-fit black suit, frameless glasses perched on his nose, exuding an air of sophisticated intellect. He looked every bit the cultured academic. Temperament-wise, he was worlds apart from the Leo the first knew, but that face. I could never mistake that face. Only son of Mayor Harrison, Julian Thorne, returns from his studies abroad. The news anchor announced. Impossible. I refused to believe it. How could this be? Leo the mayor's son? I pointed a trembling finger at the screen. That's him. The gun was his. He definitely killed someone that night. Please, I'm begging you, investigate. Everything I'm telling you is true. The officer on duty gave me a pitying, suspicious look. Miss Sarah, are you sure you're not mistaken? I let my hand fall. I had no proof. Nothing to link this man, standing on a pedestal of societal grace, to the terrifying killer who had invaded my life. With a single word, a mere gesture, he could destroy me utterly. I started to reason with myself. It's okay. It's only 15 days. It's just a lost job. Compared to losing my life, these things are insignificant. I swore to myself. I would never ever get entangled with this man again. Day 14. My only distraction was the television, and Leo's no Julian Thorne's face appeared on it countless times. He was so dazzling, so refined and well-mannered. This, they said, was the aura befitting the mayor's only son. But I knew the truth. He was rotten to the core. Day 15. I walked out of the detention center. A thick blanket of snow covered the streets. The sun hung high in the sky, but I felt no warmth from its pale light. I stood before my apartment door, fumbling for my keys. As I pushed it open, I saw him again. The devil himself. Leo was lounging on my sofa, a half-smoked cigarette dangling from his lips. His expensive black overcoat lay carelessly discarded on the floor. All traces of Julian Thorne's cultured demeanor had vanished. He took a shallow drag from the cigarette, his eyes filled with a playful, predatory amusement. Miss Sarah, we meet again. My gaze flickered to the kotatsu. There, sitting innocuously, was the gun that had been confiscated. The gun. He'd gotten it back. Leo was truly showing me the terrifying extent of power. He followed my gaze and chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. This, he said, a smirk playing on his lips, is my treasure. How could you give it to someone else, Miss Sarah? No, I blurted out. That had nothing to do with me. You really are adorable, he purred. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding. What do you really want? I admit I kissed you that night out of impulse, but it was desperation. I was trying to save my life. I didn't want my name plastered across the news headlines the next morning as another victim. Leo tilted his head, an expression of mock innocence on his face. Are you saying, I'm blaming you for kissing me? Aren't you? I honestly can't think of any other way I might have offended you. Please, I'm begging you, just let me go, okay? He rose from the sofa and advanced on me, step by deliberate step. He took a deep drag from his cigarette, then cupping my face he kissed me. The acrid smoke filled my lungs, as invasive and domineering as its owner, clouding my senses. He didn't release me until I was gasping for air. I think you're mistaken, Leo murmured, his lips brushing mine. I didn't dislike your kiss. In fact, his eyes darkened. I want more. Pervert. Shameless bastard. Rage momentarily overcame fear. I swung my hand, slapping him hard across the face. Unexpectedly, Leo didn't erupt in anger. Instead, his voice raspy, he said, hitting people isn't a very nice habit, little one. What is your name? I demanded, though I already knew the answer or thought I did. Leo paused, then a slow smile spread across his face. Does it matter? Leo is a murderer. But I am the mayor's son, Julian Thorne. So I can't be Leo. I shook my head. You are Leo. Little one, he said, his voice dangerously soft. Don't oversimplify things. If I wish it, I can be the mayor's son forever. Let's reintroduce ourselves. My name is Julian Thorne. Julian Thorne, I repeated, the name feeling alien on my tongue. So, are you going to kill me now? He pulled me into his arms, his expression suddenly chilling. If I wanted to kill you, you'd be floating in the Pacific by now. A cold dread washed over me, and I began to tremble uncontrollably. But if you don't kill me, aren't you afraid I'll expose your secret? Secret? He feigned surprise. What secret do I have? He released me, picked up the gun from the kotatsu, cocked it and pointed it at me. A dull click. He dry-fired. Julian Thorne, he said, his eyes like chips of ice. We'll never have secrets. The mayor's only son was Julian Thorne, but I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that this demon was Leo. Leo dragged me out of the apartment. Our destination, an amusement park. It wasn't until I was standing before the whimsical, brightly lit carousel that the reality of the situation fully hit me. I was once again entangled with him. Snow began to fall, soft fat flakes drifting from the bruised twilight sky. Everything around me seemed to blur. When was the last time I'd come to an amusement park? 10 years ago. When Mom and Dad were still alive. When I still had a home. That year the weather had been just like this. Mom had bundled me up in a thick, padded coat, and Dad had held me in his arms, patiently soothing my fussy cries. I had so many candies, so much love. That day had been the happiest of my life. Why are you crying? I snapped back to the present. Leo stood before me, his expression unreadable. I'm so cold, I whispered, the words barely audible. I want candy. He slipped off his expensive overcoat and draped it over my shoulders, his lips quirking in a half-smile, as if amused by a child's whim. Will candy make it all better? I nodded. He took my hand and led me into a brightly lit candy store. That day Leo, or Julian, whoever he truly was, bought me so much candy. For a fleeting moment I felt accompanied. As dusk deepened into evening, I gently tugged at the hem of his sleeve, as docile as a little girl. Can we go home now? All right, Leo agreed. We parted ways at the street corner. The streets seemed unusually quiet tonight, but I didn't dwell on it. As I rounded the corner, two men emerged from the shadows of an alleyway, the cold glint of steel in their hands, knives concealed up their sleeves. I whirled around and ran blindly straight into Leo's chest. The look in Leo's eyes was pure predatory ferocity. The men across the street began to whisper urgently. What's going on? Isn't she Julian's girlfriend? I don't know. The intel should have been solid. That face. It's Leo. Run. Quick run. I pushed away from him, my voice trembling. What does that mean? So, who exactly is Leo? He's more than just a murderer, isn't he? I had actually developed feelings for a killer. I must be truly insane. He looked flustered, reaching for my hand. I ignored him, turned and fled, the colorful candies scattering across the pristine snow like fallen jewels. That night, a fierce wind howled outside. The cartoon on my laptop played on, but this time I didn't see a single frame. My mind was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. What was I fighting against? Leo was a ticking time bomb, liable to explode at any moment. We were like daylight and stars, never meant to coexist. Bonus scene perspective shift. The curtain of night fell, moonless and heavy. Two uninvited fools had ruined all of Leo's carefully laid plans. He'd made sure to keep a low profile lately. But some people just couldn't let him be. Leo was beginning to find it all tedious. If this was how they wanted to play, it wouldn't be interesting at all. It was about 10 kilometers from here to Sarah's apartment, a rather remote area. Behind it lay an undeveloped mountain, and on its flank, a small canal that eventually snaked its way to the docks. Leo removed his glasses, replacing them with the familiar black baseball cap. When the first sliver of moonlight finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the desolate landscape, Leo, drenched in blood, stood by the canal's edge. In each hand, he held a severed head, eyes wide with a final silent scream. Plop, plop. The heads disappeared into the murky water, swept away by the current, out of Leo's sight. In the Thorne family mansion, a middle-aged man paced back and forth, his anxiety palpable. Leo lay back on the sofa, eyes closed. Get out. Stop pacing in front of me. The middle-aged man was Mayor Harrison, Julian Thorne's father. He was seething with impotent rage at this impostor, this devil who had appeared weeks ago with his son Julian's ashes and damning evidence of the mayor's own corruption, cancelled checks, signed by Harrison himself amounting to $300 million. Even a lifetime as mayor working honestly couldn't amass such a fortune. So he had been afraid. When Leo had proposed becoming Julian, Harrison had agreed without hesitation. What in God's name are you doing? Harrison hissed. I've done everything you asked, haven't I? Your activities in Northwood City are jeopardizing my entire career. Leo's eyes flickered open, filled with disdain. Oh, is that so? I don't see it that way. I'm sure you'll handle it, father. Back to Sarah's perspective. The sun rose slowly, its weak light reflecting off the thick, pristine snow. When I opened my door, Leo was standing there. He smiled when he saw me, a strangely childlike, vulnerable expression. Aren't you cold? The words slipped out before I could stop them. It wasn't what I'd meant to say, but he was dressed so thinly. He looked like an abandoned puppy, utterly wretched. How long have you been standing here? Not long, Leo said then, as if an afterthought added. I got here around 2 a.m. 2 a.m. was not long? I said nothing, just stepped aside to let him in. You can turn on the kotatsu yourself. I'm going to wash up. He nodded obediently. When I came out, he was huddled under the kotatsu, seemingly asleep. I didn't disturb him and quietly turned on the television. After a while I glanced down at him. He hadn't stirred. His face was flushed. I reached out and touched his forehead. He was burning up. A fever. No wonder. Who stands outside all night in the dead of winter? If he didn't get sick, who would? It was evening before Leo's fever finally broke. Sarah, he murmured. I was dozing off and his voice startled me awake. Ah, you're up. I'll get you some porridge. Wait, what had he just called me? I ladled the white rice porridge from the pot. Thankfully, it was still warm. What happened to me? Leo asked, his voice still weak. I looked at him, then reached out to feel his forehead again, making sure the fever had truly subsided. You had a fever. Maybe you should consider paying me for medical expenses, Mr. High and Mighty Julian. Leo looked at me dead serious. My name is Leo. His reaction made me laugh. All right then, Mr. Leo can pay. He caught my hand, pressing it to his cheek, and whispered a soft, okay. For a moment, I didn't know whether to pull my hand away or leave it there. Leo shifted closer, then picked up my phone, pulled me into his arms and click. The shutter sound. I didn't react in time. When he tossed the phone back to me, my screensaver had changed from my usual landscape photo to a picture of the two of us, him holding me, both looking surprisingly content. I turned off the phone. How old are you? Where are you from? Leo's eyes glinted. Me? Want to guess? There's a reward. I hazarded a random number. 24. Leo leaned in and kissed my cheek. He grinned, a silly boyish smile. You guessed right. That's your reward. Shameless. Taking advantage of me. In the days that followed, he came almost every day, bearing gifts as if he'd studied my every preference, each day a new thoughtful offering. One morning Leo stood at my door with a huge bouquet of white roses. I groggily looked at the alarm clock on my nightstand. 4 a.m. What was this fool doing? Who delivers flowers at 4 or 5 in the morning every day? I opened the door, glanced at the flowers, then at him, my eyes still heavy with sleep. Leo thrust the roses into my arms. Did my little one go thieving last night? Still not awake. It's so early. I'm exhausted. You can entertain yourself. I didn't know when it had happened, but the dynamic between us had subtly shifted. from my initial terror to this strange, almost harmonious coexistence. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I set down the white roses ready to go back to bed. Get ready, Leo said. I'm taking you somewhere. Don't be ridiculous. Let me sleep a little longer. Leo pulled me into the bedroom. What are you doing? By the time I realized his intentions, it felt too late. Taking advantage of my drowsiness, was he? I pressed his hands down. Playing rogue, are we? He nestled into my embrace, murmuring a soft reply. I think I'm starting to like you a little. Look at that. Who could believe such words? But people are strange. Even knowing it was unbelievable, I still asked, why? I can't explain it, Leo said, his voice sincere. It's a good feeling, a liking. Sarah, come with me. Where? I asked softly. He didn't answer. You don't want to be Julian Thorne anymore? This time he smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and tightened his embrace. No, it's not fun at all. When he said that, there was a vulnerability in his voice, a profound lack of security that I hadn't expected. Could someone like Leo, a man of such violence and power, also have such a helpless side? Perhaps it was because we had both experienced the same profound loneliness. His relationship with Julian Thorne, whatever it was, I no longer wanted to pursue. A man who could lose himself even in broad daylight. It was an endlessly absurd notion. I think I realized I needed a North Star. Let's be together, I said. Leo lifted his head, his face a mask of astonishment. What did you say? I smiled and leaned in to kiss him. I said, let's be together. Disbelief warred with something softer in Leo's eyes. Then it was overwhelmed by the tenderness of his return kiss. The demon was trying to pull me into his endless hell, to drown with him. The sun, a shy intruder, slipped through the gap in the curtains, bathing us in its gentle glow. This was our light, exclusively ours. When I woke again, it was already 3 in the afternoon. I pulled the covers tighter, reaching for the drawer of my nightstand. Inside, neatly arranged, were my parents' belongings and a photograph. A picture of 10-year-old me with my young, smiling parents. I picked up the photo, forcing a smile onto my own lips. Dad, Mom, I have a boyfriend. He's good to me. When I get the chance, I'll bring him to visit you, okay? Tears welled, blurring the image. I'm sorry, I whispered. I just don't want to be alone anymore. I'm so lonely. If this goes on, something terrible will happen to me. Even if he's a murderer, it doesn't matter anymore. Leo opened the bedroom door. You're awake, Sarah. He'd taken off his glasses, looking surprisingly boyish. I looked at him, my voice small. Are you really a wanted criminal? A flicker of something dark, dangerous, crossed his eyes before he looked at me earnestly. Are you still afraid of me? This time I spoke my heart. Yes, of course I'm afraid. You might kill me. Perhaps, Leo said softly. The old me would have. But not now. If you're good, I can treat you well like this for a lifetime. A lifetime? That sounded rather nice, didn't it? Some people foolishly dream of a pure, untroubled life of ease. Leo sat on the edge of the bed, handing me a bowl of porridge. Let me tell you a story. I was 15 when I started out on the streets. I hauled bricks, washed dishes, delivered goods, even worked as an enforcer. Money was so hard to come by back then. 80 yuan a day was a fortune. That year, when I was 15, I robbed a gold store with some guys. I messed up, lost control for a moment. Killed a clerk. I didn't dare speak, just watched him. I wasn't scared by it, not like they said I should be. Maybe like they say I was born to walk this path. Later, I ended up in Myanmar with a drug lord. On my birthday, he got drunk and violated a woman in front of me. When he was done, he killed her. Her blood splashed on my face. I felt nothing. He praised me, laughed, and said I had a killer's fate, destined for loneliness. I've seen so many families torn apart, all because of one word, greed. Telling me all this, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Aren't you afraid I'll record it or call the police? Leo didn't hesitate. It doesn't matter. I'm Leo. Yes, I said, a strange calm settling over me. You're Leo. You're different from them. Maybe you're right, maybe you do have a killer's fate. But you met me. I want to give you a home. I lowered my head. So, can you stop? For me? Stop and become Julian Thorne. Leo stared at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he took the untouched bowl of porridge from my hands and whispered, If it's what you want, then I'll be Julian. I'll be Julian for a lifetime. Girls usually don't refuse roses, do they? Leo asked later, a playful glint in his eyes. Roses. Speaking of which, where had that bouquet of white roses come from? How could there be roses in winter? It turned out I had severely underestimated the power of money. Leo took me to a greenhouse, an extravagantly large complex, filled with nothing but white roses. They bloomed in the winter air, so silent and romantic. In this fast-paced, chaotic life, they would be my second salvation. People always crave the beautiful things in this world, just as I craved the heart-fluttering tenderness and roses Leo brought me. Winter roses, I breathed. They're so hard to find in this country. How long did it take you to prepare all this? Finding these flowers, Leo said, his voice soft, was much easier than making my Sarah happy. If you want, we can go to Las Vegas. That's my turf. I deliberately ignored the latter part of his sentence, extending my hand to him. Can you dance? Dance with me. It would be my honor, Leo replied, taking my hand. That day, in an impromptu dance among the roses, we found a reason for each other's existence. I saw stars that had been absent from my life for so many years, twinkling brilliantly. I didn't know how long this relationship could last, but daylight and stars, perhaps they weren't so far apart after all. With Leo, I felt happy, truly happy. My life now had someone to care for me, to worry about me, to accompany me. There were no threats, no imprisonment. None of the bloody scenes from crime novels materialized. Leo protected me too well. Outside, the snow fell heavily. Inside, a peaceful warmth enveloped us. Everything seemed to be comforting me. I wasn't alone anymore. At least this new year, I would have someone by my side. Leo, I said one evening, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Leo, who was on the sofa, pulled me into his embrace. I've never looked forward to any new year. But if my Sarah likes it, then I like it too. I snuggled against his cheek. Even though my parents are gone, we always had an unspoken tradition. I pulled out 2 jade pendants, intricately carved with twin fish, which I'd kept in my pocket. My parents told me that if I ever found someone I loved, I should give them one of these. I'm their only daughter, and even though you, I trailed off. Even though what? He came from an unknown, dangerous background? He was a killer? It was all too strange. Leo smiled and took one of the jade pendants from my hand. Are you confessing your love to me? Are these words from your heart, Sarah? Think, my life has been worth it. He looked at me, his eyes intense. Meeting you in this lifetime, Sarah. It's been worth it. I giggled, nestled in his arms, listening to the steady beat of his heart. A heart that now seemed to beat for me. When I smiled, he smiled with me. Do you think, I whispered, we can truly be together? Leo stiffened for a moment, then smiled. We can. I'll definitely find you in the next life. I gently stroked his arm. Next life, let me find you. And don't you dare lock me out then. I won't, Leo promised. Even if you were a murderer, I'd let you in. Okay. On New Year's Eve, I woke Leo early, and we began to decorate our home. We laughed and played, flowers and stickers scattered everywhere. My favorite little rabbit figurine almost shattered when Leo knocked it, and I pouted, genuinely upset for a moment. You almost broke my little rabbit. Leo stood by the entryway, holding my figurine, his head bowed like a guilty child, too sheepish to speak. Seeing him like that, my heart softened. I beckoned him over. Okay, put it back carefully and come here. We're having dumplings tonight, and you have to help me. His eyes lit up, an endearing, almost boyish eagerness in them. After dinner, Leo held me as we sat in the kotatsu, watching the New Year's gala on television. This was our first New Year together. The clock struck 12, the New Year's bell of Northwood City chimed. Sadly, there were no fireworks this year. It felt a little lonely. Happy New Year, Leo. Leo smiled faintly. Happy New Year, my Sarah. A Tinder trap can make one lose oneself. For the first time, stars appeared in my daylight. I had found my North Star. Final act. The next morning, I slowly emerged from the warmth of the blankets. Leo was gone. I wrapped a thick robe around myself and went into the living room. Leo's overcoat still lay on the sofa. On the kotatsu beside it, lay the jade pendant I had given him. A wave of inexplicable unease washed over me. I quickly grabbed the coat and the pendant and rushed out the door. Not far from my apartment building, a swarm of police cars, their lights flashing, cordoned off the area. 2 armed helicopters hovered ominously overhead. Even though it was early morning, the massive commotion had already drawn a crowd of onlookers. I pushed my way through the throng. My eyes found him. Leo, drenched in blood, stood in the middle of the snow-covered ground, his gun clutched in his hand. When he saw me, he smiled. That smile, it tore through me. I fought to keep my composure, to make my voice sound normal. It's so cold today. Why aren't you wearing your coat? Look at you, you even forgot this. I held up the coat and the pendant. Leo shook his head, his voice raspy as he explained. Actually, that first night, it was an accident. What? I'm not a wanted criminal, not in the way they said on the news. But I'm definitely not a good person. I used some unsavory methods to threaten Mayor Harrison, to use Julian Thorne's identity to escape my past. I never thought I'd get away clean, Sarah. I'm sorry. I stood rooted to the spot, motionless. Honestly, the air was bitingly cold. Leo continued, his voice strained. I never expected to meet you. Truthfully, I should have been ruthless that first night, dealt with you then. But I couldn't. I admit that at first I just wanted to play with you. But then I realized. You're truly different. Don't blame me and don't be afraid of me. I never meant for you to end up in the detention center. That was an accident within an accident. My voice was hoarse when I called his name. Leo, you can be Julian. You promised me. You promised you'd stop, didn't you? Leo, I never blamed you. You could have just left me and run. I'm not Julian and I can't be, he choked out. Sarah, I was born with a killer's fate. I've done everything to survive. I can't run anymore. I don't want to run anymore. I'm too tired. I want to do right by you. I don't want to possess you like this. You deserve a better, more normal life, not one with someone like me. Leo's voice broke, his eyes bloodshot. Since he was 15, he'd been unable to control his violent temper. Leo was a demon, his sins unforgivable. Someone like him was destined for the deepest pits of hell after death. If it's what you wish, Leo said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, I'm willing to pay for the lives I've taken. Later, he realized his weakness. It was Sarah. Today, Leo was surrendering willingly for Sarah. He wanted to atone, to earn a clean slate for his next life, so he could then find his Sarah. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face, and tried to move towards him to embrace him. But I couldn't. I couldn't take a single step. My body felt impossibly heavy. Even just standing there exhausted me. Leo's tone was incredibly gentle. Sarah, don't look at me. Close your eyes. I clutched the jade pendant tightly in my hand and managed a bitter smile. Okay. Leo raised his gun to his own temple. Next life, he whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. I'll be Julian. I'll come marry you sooner, okay? I nodded vigorously. He pulled the trigger. A single gunshot reverberated through my entire being. Leo collapsed before me, his life extinguished. I opened my eyes, my body racked with tremors. I stumbled, then fell, crawling desperately towards him, trying to embrace his lifeless form. The air was so cold. The man who had once been so warm was now slowly, irrevocably, losing his heat. My love. How could he just leave me like this? My fingers found the gun he'd dropped in the snow. Thank God, there were still bullets. It just took a little effort to cock it. I didn't want to be alone anymore. Trembling, I leaned down and kissed his cold lips. You did well, I whispered. This is your reward. I hung my jade pendant around his neck, then settled into a comfortable position, nestled in his embrace. Another gunshot rang out, and then the snow began to fall in earnest, a heavy, silent deluge, blanketing us both. Seems I won't see spring this year. But at least my lover and I died in my favorite winter. They never spoke of love. Their love needed no words. And